Hello lads, ladies, gents, ladettes, whoever, whatever, welcome back to another video. It's pretty commonplace for games to copy gameplay elements from one another, and nowhere is this more apparent than in the 2001 tie-in game for Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase. Following the same plot as the movie it's based on, which we will talk about in a little bit, publisher THQ had hired a small Japanese development team known as Artco. Sadly, like THQ, Artco seemed to no longer be around, seemingly bought out by a corporation known as Furyu. Now I do apologise, I probably butchered the hell out of their name. Though, I'm not sure how true this is since I can't really read or understand Japanese, I'm just going based off what I could find on their website. They were pretty much a team that was always tasked with developing ports for mainline titles, and Scooby-Doo was probably the biggest IP they ever got to work with. Though, surprisingly, given the longevity of the Scooby-Doo series, you would expect there to be an absolutely insane amount of games. But what is actually mind-blowing is the fact there's only 15. 13 if you don't count the ones where they're just side characters like Multiverses and Lego Dimensions. I'd love to see a point-and-click adventure game for the mystery game, because honestly I think it's the perfect genre for the perfect team. It really feels like a missed opportunity, so hopefully maybe in the future we get something. Being a game based on a cartoon movie special based on a video game, you would hope they would knock it out of the park given the fact that they had some pretty solid foundations here to work from. However, instead of following the movie's seemingly ever-evolving gameplay loops, the game itself sticks to a single genre, that of a third-person action platformer in the vein of Crash Bandicoot 2. It's not something I would say is a full-blown one-to-one clone, but it really wears its inspiration on its sleeve and it's easy to see exactly what they're going for here.
I shall call him Mini-Me.
They did think to evolve the combat just a little bit by adding in the ability to throw pies to defeat enemies. However, these do have their own source of frustration, as the controls can be a little bit floaty, making the aim a little more difficult than you would like. It's not so bad that you won't be able to get decent with it, but it can definitely lead to some hair-pulling moments. These slightly floaty controls can become a bit of a problem towards the end of the game, because even after spanning a decent variety of level locations, in order to make the game feel like you got your money's worth, it does what a lot of games of its era did, and that was make things more difficult than they needed to be in order to pad out its playtime. The level of precision the game asks for by the time you hit dinosaur levels is definitely going to cause you to lose your mind if you're not used to these type of games. To counter this, and to be fair, the game is pretty generous with its extra lives, allowing you to power through most of these. However, I know younger me would have smashed a controller or two trying to play this. I don't get gamers rage much these days, but this is as close as I've got in a long time. Beyond the floaty controls, the only real issue that I had with the game was the fact text pop-up for dialogue would actually cause the gameplay to be frozen until the dialogue itself is finished. This really hurts the flow of each level in my opinion, as the momentum you're building basically stops on the spot. Now, in the game's defense, you do have to accept most of these text pop-ups, as you'll get a little notification in the top right corner telling you that there is some dialogue to be had. But I think just letting voices play over the top of the gameplay would have been the better choice. Though, again, to give the game some credit, this wasn't really normal for games until we got to the PS2, Xbox and GameCube era of gaming. The voice acting itself is incredibly good, as it consists of the same cast as the movie that it's based on. If anything, it's a little sad that there isn't more voice acting within the game. I understand it's a PS1 game and there's only so much data you can fit on a single disc, but it would have been nice to see this incredible talent that they had be displayed a little bit more.
I've spread my evil virus all over this game. Yeah, boy.
The best chance to get to hear any of this really good voice acting is during the boss fights, as every boss fight will start off with a dialogue to introduce them.
Looks like you've detected one of the Phantom Virus's main bosses. Defeating him should get you out of Japan and back to safety, Scooby.
Sometimes you'll get hints on how to beat them or what to expect, so it's worth paying attention. The fights themselves, when it comes to the gameplay, are probably the highlight of the game for me, as they have a good variety overall and never really feel too stale. Though, as I mentioned earlier, thanks to the lack of finer aiming when it comes to throwing pies, it can make them a little more difficult than you would like. They're never so hard you won't ever beat them, but they definitely can be a source of frustration. Add this with the fact you can only hold a certain amount of pies, and a lot of the combat turns into ignore everyone but the boss if possible. It's like an uncoordinated Shaggy and Scooby. The game just seems to be tripping over itself as it goes. Where the game really starts to shine though, at least for me personally, is its overall presentation, as it has a lot of personality while capturing the very essence of the show. Sure, it doesn't have the toot of its inspiration Crash Bandicoot, but it does have a wonderful bright colour palette. With an overall variety of different level design, from Japan to Dinosaur Land, the game's visuals are a feast for the eyes, at least for a PS1 game. If I was to criticise anything about the game's presentation, I would say its soundtrack does leave a little bit to be desired. And even though it's perfectly functional, it feels mostly generic more so than inspired. I've said many times in the past, a soundtrack should service the game more so than be the main attraction of the game itself. And I would say for the most part, the soundtrack does do this, but not in the best way possible. It's functional, but there's nothing here that stands out. There is nothing here that makes me go, oh, that reminds me of that level. It just feels very generic. And it's not the only thing that left me a little bit disappointed. The fact that we only get to play as Shaggy with his scoliosis and Scooby-Doo kind of left me wanting more. I'm a fan of the entire Mystery Gang, and even though I understand Shaggy and Scooby are the main characters, it would have been nice to play as Velma, Fred, or Daphne. I think they would have evolved the gameplay just a little bit more by adding in their unique personalities. And even though, as I mentioned, we do get to hear from them, we never really get to play with them. The overall experience itself is pretty short, being about 2 to 3 hours at best, and the fact that there aren't really different levels, character selection, or overall gameplay variety means there isn't a lot of replay value here. If anything, it reminds me a lot of Disney's Lilo and Stitch more so than it does Crash Bandicoot. I've avoided talking about the plot up until now, mainly for spoiler reasons for both the movie and game, so consider this your warning. It follows the Mystery Gang as they enter cyberspace in order to chase down a villain known as the Phantom Virus, who has started infecting a game that's being created based on the Mystery Gang's past adventures. So it's a game based on a movie, based on a game, based on cartoons. What the f? As usual, it pretty much always boils down to bad guy does bad thing, good guy shows up and saves the day. However, this is one of those times I don't think it necessarily translates too well to the video game adaptation. I think the concept is cool, but the gameplay not evolving does make it feel like it falls a bit flat. Whereas in the movie, they kept things fresh and a little more exciting. Now, could you do worse for a Bandicoot clone? 100%. I wouldn't say this is the quintessential Scooby-Doo experience either. It's neither great, nor is it really bad. It's pretty much just okay. If you want a little bit of nostalgia, you could definitely do worse. I do think it's a game worth playing, but not a game worth going back to. So if you've never tried it, give it a go. But if you have, I'd leave it in the past. So with that, lads, ladies, gents, ladettes, whoever, whatever, it brings us to the end of another video. I hope you enjoyed this look back at Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase. I know it's been a little while since I made a video in terms of a proper video, so I just want to say thank you again for those who watched and were patient with me. Who's your favorite member of the Mystery Gang? Mine will always be Velma because I like thick nerdy girls and I am the human equivalent of a thumb and sad. So there's that. If you enjoyed the video, please consider hitting that like button. If you want to go that extra step, you can hit the subscribe button. If you want to go that extra mile, you can support me on Ko-fi from just $1 a month like these lovely people here. And with that all said, I hope you guys stay safe out there and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.